thank you very much for being here. It was really short notice, but when we heard that Stuart was going to be available, we had to make use of it. And this is fantastic to see so many people that I haven't met before. I'm Michelle. We have Jim Mars, who just wrote this book. He's actually right here in the hat. It's pretty fantastic to meet him in person. And he's going to be speaking in Dallas. Regina, my sister Regina, is going to talk about 2 other upcoming meetings.
I tried to hand out one of these cards to just about everybody. Okay, thank you, sis. And so if you haven't gotten one of these, it talks about several events that are coming up, one of which is Jim Mars on the 20th. He's going to be speaking at the Hilton Garland Hotel. Oh, Hilton Garden Hotel, which is right at the Bethany exit off of 75 at 7:30. And he's going to be discussing the Federal Reserve and the JFK assassination. I mean, he's an authority on so many things, but that's what he's going to be targeting. And then on the 28th, the Patriot whistleblowers, Jimmy and Joanne Moriarty, are going to be coming and talking about what they saw, all the atrocities they saw in Libya, which connects to Syria and Obama, so several things. So we're activists for truth. We have these flyers around, and good? Oh, and then don't comply. Don't comply. You know, open carry, that's... He's coming up. Oh, he's coming up, even for the one that's coming up soon? Yep. Not San Antonio? All right, good. All right, thank you.
All right. Yeah, I'm Murdoch Piscagati. I'm with Don'tComply.com. We're also the ComeAndTakeItAmerica.com, which does all the open carry events around town, around Texas, actually. Man, this is a good turnout. Thanks, everybody, coming out tonight. Maybe we'll get the AC working a little better. Well, as you know, we do monthly, weekly marches and events and meetups all around Texas. We're here to educate the public about the open carry laws in Texas that we're trying to push for a more constitutional version of that. And it's going really well. We're having great rapport with all of the local police departments and chiefs all across Texas, and we're winning over hearts and minds of the citizens. Well, in a couple weeks, due to a recent event down in San Antonio where several of our members got harassed by some of the officers, we're doing this right here. The line in the sand at the Alamo, on the front steps of the Alamo, we're all meeting under weight of arms to show them that we do have the right to bear arms, that it's not going to be infringed. And all of our local chapters from all around of our open carry groups are all meeting. Jay Stang's going to be there meeting. Our Texas Land Commissioner, Jerry Patterson, is going to be there. Was Stuart going to make this one?
Stuart is definitely going to try.
Stuart's going to try to be there as well. Several other politicians. Please make it out there. It's really important. We need to show Chief McManus that we're not going to back down, that these are our rights, and we're going to tell them this is our line in the sand. So y'all come out. Thanks a lot.
We're still doing Dallas, too.
Yeah, and if you can't make it, we are still doing a walk in Dallas. They're meeting down at the Grassy Knoll that same Saturday. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Stuart will be up in just a minute. And I really would appreciate it if all of y'all would email me so that I would be able to contact you in the future. If you have any questions about Oath Keepers, membership, the forums, how to get more information, email me and I will try to forward on your questions. Sometimes question and answers get rather long with Stuart, so any questions that are unanswered, I'll just forward to him. Regina and I had been involved in lots of things since we were kids. And I personally was getting rather discouraged because I didn't think that we were going to end up with enough time to be able to wake up enough people to make a difference. And I was reading in a magazine, I read Sheriff Mack, and he was talking about Oath Keepers, and he said, and I was like, well, that would work. All we need are for the police and the military to stand down. If they're given an unconstitutional, unlawful order, them standing down is the answer. You can't have tyranny without someone in uniform with a gun enforcing tyranny. So Stuart is just getting a drink, so it'll be just a second, so I'm stalling. Is there anyone else that has a meeting coming up that wants it announced? Please do. So don'tcomply.com is kind of a resource for lots of groups getting out information. And Activists for Truth, Regina, it's a storehouse she promotes a variety of issues, not just one issue. So both of those are kind of storehouses for where you can find out about our type of meetings or other type of meetings. Here's Richard.
Cool. Here's Richard. So yeah, very cool to be on this long list of patriots here and everything like this, all this strong movement, momentum. I'm representing here today, apparently, the March Against Monsanto on the 12th, which is listed on this card. Awesome. So this is our second march. We had one a couple months back. We had over 1,000 people show up for it. It was a pretty powerful thing to see all these people. And out of that, we have seen community gardens start up, fluoride resistance, all these things. And it's been steadily moving along at a pace enough to where we have 3,000 people RSVP'd for this second one coming up. We will have multiple groups showing up. Don't Comply will be there and everything, so in a roundabout way, this will also be a Second Amendment function. However, even though I was one of the original organizers for the first one, I'm just publicity for this one and everything like that, but it should be a very good thing to show up for and everything, so definitely something worth checking out. Also here representing the Texas branch of the Final American Revolution as far as the Kokesh thing goes on and everything like that, and all these actions and everything are pretty much related to each other. So if you have any questions about the forward momentum in any of those things, how these issues collide with each other and turn into the same thing basically at the end of the game, how we're all in this together, go ahead and touch base with me, plug you into the right people.
Richard,
appreciate it.
I didn't say that it's at City Hall.
Oh yes, City Hall, we do, however, I believe have a new route. Last time we went from City Hall down around the Farmers Market and back, but with the 1,500 or so many people that showed up by the time we got back, there was like the tail end of the slug coming back around and everything like that. So I think we stretched it out a little bit this year, but it's family friendly. We have blocks and back with little kids dressed up like bumblebees, that whole business and everything like that. We're also going to have the more serious edge of the fact that we are being poisoned against our wills up in the front, being represented by me and at least Murdoch with Don't Comply and everything like that. So, yes, sir?
Hey, can we combine the open carry march with the March Against Monsanto? Monsanto we're really serious.
That's exactly what this whole thing has actually turned out for me. I mean, there's a lot of levity about environmental issues and everything like that when you get into activism and everything like that, but fundamentally, I've never met somebody who's made a convincing argument towards me about how it's better for me to be poisoned against my will. So, generally speaking, I take that seriously. It's a threat on my well-being, the well-being of the people around me as well, and I think that an armed march, not just within the context of environmentalism, but seeing that across the face of activism in a very responsible and peaceful fashion, which is what Open Carry in Texas and Don't Comply is about, is definitely going to be one of the next steps this country takes and everything like that, is just whatever you stand for, done being shoved. That's it. So.
My name is Kirk Lanius, and I am a United States Navy veteran and former Dallas police officer, and a member of Oath Keepers, and also the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officer Association, where I've met Stuart before, and I'm so thrilled he's here tonight. Just a couple of things. I'm organizing an event for law enforcement. How many people here are in law enforcement or Texas peace officers? Okay, if you know some, if you'd like to put them on a list, I'd like to contact them, get them to become members of Oath Keepers for one thing, and also we're organizing an event. We're going to start a series on, it's going to be based on Dr. Edwin Vieira's Constitutional Homeland Security, which is a call to revitalize the militias of the several states. It's, I don't know if how many of you have seen Dr. Vieira's presentations? I mean, the man has how many degrees from Harvard? He's a constitutional expert, and it's very sound. And so we'll be putting that together. Possible venues, I know Pastor Broden said we could use his location down there near Fair Park, which will hold about 400. But if you'd like to help me organize that and reach out to sheriff's deputies, police officers, we've seen some incidents in the Metroplex in the recent weeks, and all over the country, where peace officers, and I know because they didn't teach the Constitution in the police academy, and they don't teach it in most law schools. You got to make the effort to learn yourself. So you'd like to be part of that and help me in that outreach effort to peace officers, and I think Stuart can talk about the Operation Sleeping Giant and all those great efforts, because that really is, as Sheriff Max says, our last chance as the constitutional sheriff. So also I have documentary copies of Dennis Michael Lynch's 2 documentaries, They Come to America. I think this event tonight will be available on DVD for a suggested donation of 10. So buy that first if you want a DVD tonight, and come see me afterwards. Dennis Michael Lynch is a filmmaker documenting what's going on in DC right now. He's been on the news all week. The shutdown of the memorials, the illegals on the mall, everything going to happen this weekend, and this is all about the border and the cost of amnesty. When Obamacare and amnesty collide, it's a disaster for our republic. So thank you for your time, and
I'd like to thank John Gentry and John Seidler for always being so willing and fantastic at videotaping. Thank you. Stuart Rhodes was a paratrooper injured in a jump, which actually worked out well for us because then he went to Yale and got a constitutional law degree and formed Oath Keepers. Thank you, Stuart, for being here.
I guess that means I'm up. So, hey, Michelle, I'm going to put this on a chair next to me. How many guys here are kind of new, don't really know much about Oath Keepers? Raise your hand. So let me just kind of give it to you in a nutshell. I started Oath Keepers because I realized that after having gone to law school and then working in D.C. for Ron Paul's office in D.C., I realized that the lawyers and the judges, with extremely few exceptions, have long ago wiped their rear ends with the Constitution and don't care about their oaths. And so I wanted to turn to the guys who still do have some integrity and honor and courage. I served as a paratrooper in the Army, so I know that our current serving had that kind of integrity. But the question is do they know what's right and wrong? And we saw during Hurricane Katrina, for example, where you had police officers and National Guardsmen, even some current serving active Army, obeying unlawful orders to disarm people who were just trying to defend themselves and protect their property. And so, unfortunately, I think in large part through ignorance, not knowing what's right, they did the wrong thing. And so that was kind of a big wake-up call for a lot of people, and that's why I started Oath Keepers. I realized that our country now is being run by a bunch of scoundrels in both parties who don't care about the Constitution, and we're going to stop them. A big part of that, not all of it, but a big element, is to take away their muscle. They want to use the local police officers as their force multipliers to come oppress you. They want to use the military. You can look at some of these websites where after Obama got elected, I think Daily Kos is one of them, they're practically having wet dreams over the prospect of using the U.S. military against us, as if they would do that. That's where they're making a strategic error in their thinking. Because I can tell you, I talked recently to some Special Forces personnel, both Marine Scout snipers. I've spoken to Special Operations personnel from the Air Force and Army Special Forces, and they're all say the same thing. At least half of their unit is wide awake, and not just to the constitutional issues, but also awake and aware of the economic issues, of the destruction of the dollar. And they can see it in their own grocery shopping. Prices are going up, cans are shrinking, boxes are shrinking. They're not stupid. You don't get to be a Special Forces guy and be dumb. So they're seeing what's happening.
Put your papers on that.
And so the awareness is already starting to happen in the military. I'm not going to take credit for it. That's not the point. The point is I want to amplify it and grow it. We want to get that to be a major turning of the tide. That's why we put billboards outside of military bases. We have some outside of 29 Palms right now, up here at Fort Hood, Fort Stewart, Georgia, Hunter Army Liggett Airfield there. Also, I believe Fort Benning, still is one in Fort Benning, right? Michelle's actually in charge of that project. And we got, for you Marines out there, how many Marines are in the audience right now? All right. What is this? How many Marines we got? How many?
Millions.
Where the hell are the rest of the Marines? Your anniversary's coming up here November 10th, right? So for your anniversary, we want to see some billboards outside of Camp Pendleton. And we also want to see them outside of Lejeune. And I don't know if you've seen the one at 29 Palms, but it's the Iwo Jima flag raising. Short and sweet, I think it works. It says they honored their oath, honor yours, refuse to disarm Americans. That's our flagship Marine Corps billboard. So imagine that outside of Pendleton. So we're going to be putting out within the next few days an email blast, because now we're down to what, $2,000 in our billboard fund? We started out with $50,000. One lady, a lady, who's never served in her life, donated $30,000 from Idaho. So we're going to put an appeal out to all you Marines to step up and fund these billboards. Don't get shamed by a housewife in Idaho. So then we'll have a contest and see between Army and Marine Corps who can have the most billboards. That'll be fun. So to the active duty military, we reach out to them all we can. We started out by issuing a declaration of 10 orders that no oath keeper would ever obey. And the top of that list is we will not obey orders to disarm the American people. Not because it's the most important part of our Constitution, but just because we know that that's what leads to fighting. That's what led to our first revolution. And an attempt to confiscate firearms is most likely to lead to number 2. But down that list is also detention without trial, warrantless searches. Gee, when would they ever do warrantless searches of the American people? The point of that list is not that we think that's the end-all, be-all of your duties. We consider it a starting point. In fact, you got one of our brochures, Michelle? On the back of our brochures and a lot of our cards, we'll have that list of 10 orders. We issued that from the perspective of those of us who are still in current service. And like I was down in Austin to give a speech night before last, and a soldier walked up to me, Fort Hood soldier, in civvy clothes, walked up and introduced himself. He's a warrant officer. He flies Apaches at Fort Hood. And he said, if you want to come to Fort Hood and get a tour of my Apache and sit in the cockpit, just let me know, you know. So that's an example of why it's important for us to continue to reach out. I don't even know the guy. Never met him before in my life. But he understands his oath. He understands the Constitution. He drove all the way down there just to meet me. So there's a good example of what you want to see inside our ranks. Good people like that, awake and aware of what's going on in the country, who are taking the Constitution seriously. And the main goal is not that I'm trying to say, you must agree with me on all of this, that my interpretation of the Constitution is it. That's not it. I want them all to go and learn the Constitution themselves, be very sincere students of the Constitution. So we encourage them to go read, like the Federalist Papers. We want them to go read, even before that, the Declaration of Independence, the Declaration for the cause of taking up arms, the reasons why we fought our revolution in the first place. Because you can go look at the Declaration of Independence, and you can go look at all the accusations against King George, all the things that he was charged with that justified separation. And what they are, apparently, is a shopping list for the current regime in Washington, D.C. They're going down, it's almost a mirror image of what's happening now. So,
Ordering the troops in Poland. Getting around to that one, I'm sure.
Well, frankly, I think a lot of what happened in Boston kind of qualifies. So I consider that pretty much de facto martial law. And on that point, there's the outreach to the current serving, but there's also the other flip side of our mission is outreach to all the veterans. How many veterans in the room tonight? You swore that oath. When does your oath expire?
Never.
Never. When you do. So long as you're on this side of the grass, you got a duty to defend it too. How do you do that? And that's what I want to talk about tonight. From the very beginning, from my first speech on Lexington Green in 2009, I pointed out that the veterans have a duty and responsibility. I talked about one veteran who fought that day on April 19th, 1775 with Samuel Whitmore. You guys know his story? How many here know the story of Samuel Whitmore? You need to learn your history, folks. Samuel Whitmore at the time, was an 80-year-old farmer, a veteran of the French-Indian War, who had long since put up his musket and went back to being a farmer. Well, on April 19, 1775, he was out tilling his field and he saw the Royal Marine reinforcement column heading towards Lexington, and he decided he'd had enough. He went inside, grabbed his musket, grabbed a French sword that he had captured during the war against the French and Indians, strapped on 2 dueling pistols, and went out there and ambushed the column at close range. He had no intention of running around all the young guys, so he made all his shots count, right up close, fired 3 shots, dropped 3 regulars in their tracks. Then they charged him, as they would do. They charged him with bayonets. He pulled his sword out and fought sword against bayonet. He was shot in the face, bayoneted 19 times, and left for dead. So his family goes out there to go get his body, and they're crying, and they figured they're going to be burying him now. And they get there and they realize he's not dead yet. Not only is he not dead yet, he's trying to reload his musket for one more shot. So that is the spirit of a veteran. I don't care how broke up you are. I got bad knees, bad back. I don't care. So long as you are still conscious, still alive, you have a duty. He understood that. Years later, when he was asked, he survived actually. He actually went on to father a couple more kids. So he was not out of ammunition. But he was asked years later, why did he do that? Why would you, as you weren't a soldier anymore, you were just a farmer. Why did you go out and do that? And he said, because I did not want to leave my children and grandchildren subject to some distant king. That's what he said. So he had his priorities straight. He knew that what matters, and all that matters, is that our children are free. None of us gets out of here alive. We're all going to go meet our Maker, but are your children free? Have you left them in freedom or in chains? That's really the only friggin' question. Everything else that's going on throughout your life is nothing compared to that answer. And have you done your duty? Have you done what you're supposed to do? What did Colonel Travis say at the Alamo in that one plea letter he sent out? What did he say? He said, I will preserve myself. I got the quote right here. I think I got it right here. Here it is. I'll read it to you. I think it's worth hearing. Here's what he said. I don't have it. That's not it. Basically, he said, look, I will hang on as long as I can, and I will fight to the death. And I will do what a soldier knows is his duty, due to his own honor and to his country, and that is victory or death. He was willing to do that. When he drew that line, he asked the guys, those of you who are willing to give up your life, knowing they weren't going to get out of there alive, those of you willing to give up your life for liberty, step across this line and stand with me. And that's what they did. They have that same spirit. You're Texans, right? I don't want to hear crap about being afraid of the NSA putting you on some stupid list. Don't you think Santa Anna knew the names of the men at the Alamo already? He knew who he was dealing with. You're already on their friggin' list. If you're a military veteran, if you're a police officer, if you're a Tea Party member, if you're a Ron Paul supporter or a Chuck Baldwin supporter, if you've done any of those sacrilegious evil things, you're on their friggin' list already. So get over it, all right? But if you're not on the list, you're not doing your job, So, but how does a veteran keep his oath, for example? What are your duties and responsibilities? Is it just voting? That's what the powers that be want you to think. They want you to think that as long as you go and pull the handle once in a while for Oathbreaker A or Oathbreaker B, that's the extent of your duties. They don't want you to do anything else. Anything else is a threat to their power. They want you to believe, give you the illusion that you're a full citizen by just going and voting. A full spectrum American doesn't just vote. The founders understood what a full spectrum American is. What did they do? They showed you the way. Every able-bodied male in the community was in the militia. What did Ben Franklin do? He's one of the first guys to start a volunteer fire department in America, right? They were responsible for their own fire protection. How many guys here have seen the John Adams special that they ran on TV a few years back? The opening scene, he comes back home from being an attorney, takes his wig off, takes his boots off, puts his feet up in front of the fire, and then a bell goes off. And he jumps up without his wig on, runs outside, and starts bailing along with everybody else to put out the friggin' fire. That's what an American does. You don't sit on the couch and go, oh, I sure hope the fire department gets there in time. I guess someone's house is on fire. He gets off his butt and goes outside and helps. When you abdicate that duty and responsibility to be the security force, the fire protection, the search and rescue, the militia, whatever you want to call it, when you abdicate all those core responsibilities of life, you're no longer a free American. You are a slave. I don't like Like, you know, a lot of guys, they're police officers or soldiers, call themselves sheepdogs. I don't like that. You know why? Because Americans are not supposed to be sheep. It's a screwed up paradigm. You all, every American is supposed to be a soldier. Every American is a warrior. Every American is in the front ranks. Whether it's private criminals, you all know that. It's easy to see that. Who's going to be there to help you out tonight if some crack addict or whatever comes out of nowhere with a knife or a gun in his hand? Who's on duty right there? Do you have a police officer with you? With one exception in this audience, the answer is no. There's not going to be a cop next to you. It's on you. Y'all understand that. But it's also true, look at Katrina, you know? Or look at the Rodney King riots. The police in LA were overwhelmed. They could not secure that area. Folks were left on their own. They had to secure themselves. The Korean shop owners understood that. What'd they do? They took care of it, yeah. And there were other folks who weren't on the news that did the same thing. They took care of their neighborhoods. They put a couple cars across the main entrance of the neighborhood at certain choke points, and they guarded their neighborhoods with shotguns and rifles. And the looters caught the message pretty quick. Let's not go burn that place. We'll want to burn our own places down. That's what they wind up doing, is burning their own neighborhoods down. Look, every natural disaster across this country, whether it's a tornado, a hurricane, earthquake, without exception, you wind up seeing the same thing. A bunch of guys standing on their front lawns with shotguns and rifles, keeping the looting down, keeping the peace. That's what happens anyway. You are going to be, when the crap hits the fan in your community for whatever reason, whether it's man-made or natural disaster, you are going to wind up being the security force for your neighborhood, your community. So why not understand that and get ready for it ahead of time? Every time you've seen a big disaster, Sandy, Hurricane Katrina, every time you see that, what happens? The feds come in, they make things worse than they were, usually. And you cannot rely on FEMA, even if FEMA had the best of intentions, even setting aside all of the less than honorable intentions we know are coming down from Washington, D.C., you still can't trust a top-down bureaucracy to take care of you. The founders didn't trust that. They had the wisdom to understand that the safest and most effective place to put the power, the national security, military power, is in the hands of the people. That's why Dr. Edwin Vieira's book is called Constitutional Homeland Security. He's talking about the militia. It's a safe place to put the power. And it's also a safe place to put the police power, too. You're supposed to be the sheriff's posse. The people themselves are supposed to be the backbone for both law enforcement functions and military functions. It's you. And the more you let go of that responsibility and abdicate it to someone else, the less secure you're going to be and the less free you're going to be. That's why the Second Amendment says what it says. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. It's necessary. It's not optional. It's not a possibly good idea. It's friggin' necessary. And if you don't have it, you won't be either secure or free. So I agree completely with Dr. Vieira's goal, long-term goal of revitalizing the state militias. I'm not talking about Billy Bob's butt crack militia running around, some guy never served in the Army, calling himself colonel. I'm talking about an honest-to-God state militia under the command of your governor, made up of all of you. Now look, I've known some guys who've been in some of these private militias, and some of them are very squared away. But you've got to admit, all you guys who are in militias, you know what I'm talking about. Inevitably, some guy shows up, wasn't even a cook in the Army and Marine Corps, never even served at all, and all of a sudden he's a colonel or a major. Holy cow. So how's that happen? Point being, though, is that it should be all of you. It should never be a select body. It should never be a select. If you have a nation where only a select body, whether they're military or police, or even the militia, where it's only a small number of people are trained and organized under arms, you've got a problem. Because they're not going to be able to maintain security. Look at the cops being overwhelmed in LA, even Katrina, same thing. They cannot do it. You wind up with a vacuum of power. If the good people in the community, there are more good folks than there are bad ones. That's the truth. That's what the anti-gunners don't get. The reason why it's a good idea for the people to be armed is because there's more good guys than bad guys. But if the good guys are unarmed, that leaves the arms in the hands of who? Just the bad guys. They don't care about laws. But the main point is if the good people sit down, even if you got guns, if you're not organized for mutual defense and you're just in your house by yourself waiting for MS-13 or the local, gang of flavor of the month to come through your door, are you going to be effective at defending yourself? I don't care how high speed, low drag you are, one guy is going to have a hard time defending his house against a gang of looters. First of all, they'll just burn you out if they want to. Your four walls cannot be your security perimeter. That is not effective. You want your perimeter to be as wide out as you can get it. Better than one house would be two guys who are across the street from each other, right? I can scrub your front door, you can scrub my front door. Better than that is three guys in a triangle. Better than that is 4 or 5. The more folks, taking guys with the same skills, everybody's got a rifle or a shotgun. But if they're coordinated, 4 or 5 guys, and it's on one street alone, can they handle the gangbangers coming down the street? Yes, they can. It makes a big difference. All you guys serve in the military, if you're infantry, you know what I'm talking about. 2 is way better than 1. 4 is even better than 2. And 8's even better than that. The more you can get coordination like that, I'm talking even just on security alone. That also goes for trying to find people during an emergency. Search and rescue. That also goes for medical and communications and engineering, keeping the lights on, clean water. All that kind of stuff requires team efforts. So that's why we started at Oath Keepers an initiative called the Civilization Preservation Teams. And what it really is that we're not saying we want everyone to join Oath Keepers. That's not it. It's far more insidious than that. What we're going to do is say, look, we're a working model. All we're doing is giving you an example. You can do it your own way in your neighborhood or in your veterans hall. What we want you to do is understand the necessity. And then if you want to adopt our model, we'll make it easy for you to have something you can take to your neighborhood watch captain, your post commander for your VFW, Marine Corps League. Here's a turnkey system you can adopt. Take it, tweak it, change it any way you want to, have at it. But you need to understand the necessity of having those core critical skills taken care of. Now, what are the core things you need in an emergency? After every hurricane or tornado, what do folks wind up needing? Water. Water. Clean water, right? Right. Okay, what's another one? Medical. That's right, medical aid. Number 3, what's another one? Food. Shelter. Warmth. Sanitation. And security. Now, because you all live in Texas, everyone's got guns, you can probably improvise security. Like I said, you don't want to be by yourself. You do want to reach out to your neighbors. In advance, it'd be better to do it in advance. But the one thing you really cannot improvise, it's kind of hard to improvise communications, like ham radios. Either you got them or you don't. Medical's difficult to improvise. Either you got medical gear or you don't. And clean water and sanitation, emergency power, generators, things like that, also can be difficult to improvise. So that's why, even if your neighbors are asleep, imagine if you and a core group of 4, 5, 6, whatever, took it seriously and you made sure you had communications, ham radios, CB radios. If you made sure you had medical, at least one of you trained up as an EMT or a retired medic, something like that. Make sure you got those categories covered, the things you are going to need. If you've got medical, commo, engineering, and the basis of a security structure, how you would defend your neighborhood, where your choke points are, things like that, you can have that ready to go as a skeleton team waiting pre-event so that you're there when the event happens. Then you can go grab all of the lazy bums that weren't paying attention and say, okay, bum, you got a shotgun, you got a rifle, follow me. They can improvise that. But be the nucleus of the team in your neighborhood. That's why we're using the Special Forces A-Team model. That's what they do. The Special Forces A-Team, and Hugh is here, military. Hugh, raise your hand and say hi. Hugh was a intelligence officer in the Army, and he worked with SF directly, I believe, in certain areas of the world. And so he knows what I'm talking about. They go into an area, and their main job is not to go in there and break things. Their main job is to go in there and teach, train, and lead. They organize the locals to get things done. They make the locals more effective. The locals might have courage honor, and all that good stuff, but they just don't know how to organize effectively, so they'll send an SFA team in there and get them all organized. For example, if they're going to overthrow some dictator, that's why their motto is "De oppresso liber," to liberate the oppressed. They would parachute an A-team in, and they would train the guerrillas. So what's on an A-team? They got 2 medics. They're redundant, so in case they lose a guy, they got a backup. 2 medics, 2 communications experts, 2 engineers, combat engineers, 2 weapons experts. They got their CO and his assistant commanding officer. Then they got their operations sergeant and his assistant, who also does intelligence. So they got those core critical skills covered. They're all soldiers, they can all shoot, but they've got commo medical engineering. You've got to have that stuff. So we're taking that same model and saying, okay, how do we adapt that to your average veterans hall, to your average church, to your average neighborhood watch? Every single one of you should see yourself as the commander of that A-team. In your family, decide who's going to be concentrating on those skills. My son is getting his ham license. I'm going to EMT school. We're picking certain specialties we know we're going to need, and we're getting trained up and geared up in them now. Consider your family a team, which it is anyway. Husband, wife, older kids, grandma, grandpa. What skill sets do you already have? If you've got holes in your skill set, say you have no one on the medical track, well, someone's got to pick that and go get it done. Okay? I never had formal medical training, but I know it's a critical skill I got to have. My wife knows a lot. She's doing a lot of home births. She knows a lot about herbal medicine. But for trauma medicine, she'd prefer that I go learn that stuff. So I'm going to be the guy for that. So see your family as a team. Then your extended circle of friends. So it's like concentric rings going out from you. Are you squared away? Have you picked a certain thing you're going to get good at? And then now you pick other ones for your family. They pick each other what their inclination is. Then your extended family. Then your neighborhood. Then your church. Then your communal associations like your veterans halls. Your Tea Party groups, whatever they might be. Your Ron Paul meetup groups, whatever group you're in. All of those are possible mutual aid societies. And when it comes to veterans halls in particular, that they truly are a sleeping giant. That's what we call it, Operation Sleeping Giant, to wake up the veterans. Like in the halls near my house, Kalispell, Montana, has 500 guys in a local VFW. Now what is that? It's almost a friggin' battalion. It's a lot of guys. And in that veterans hall, whenever I go talk to VFWs, I'll say, how many commo guys are in here? At least 2 or 3 hand goes up. How many corpsmen or medics are in here? Hands go up. How many engineers you got? How many motor pool and logistics? How many supply guys? On down the line. You got all of this knowledge and training and skill and leadership experience sitting there in your local VFW, but what are they doing with it?
Drinking beer.
Mostly, yeah. Well, there's nothing wrong with drinking beer as long as you do something else while you're drinking it. I like to multitask. So yeah, I mean, unfortunately, they're not doing a whole lot. They do parades, they'll do Toys for Tots, the Marine Corps League does that. They'll do a lot of cool stuff for local, community things, but they're not seeing themselves for what they really are. What they are is a unit for civil defense. What they are is a pool of trained, experienced men for the sheriff's posse. And what they are is also a trained body of men for community defense. That's where I want to put my faith when it comes to militia duties, in the hands of the guys. I mean, Uncle Sugar spent a lot of money training them. You might as well take advantage of it. That doesn't mean you can't also involve your average gun owner. Some of the best shots I know in Montana are guys who never served in the military. I know one guy dropped his elk at 960 yards. That's a good shot, So, point being, take advantage of the training that you already have in your veterans. They were trained by Uncle Sam, spent a lot of money and quite a few years training them up. Use it. Get them to see themselves as a unit. All it really takes is saying, hey, look, you've got this oath you swore, you got the training, you can see what's going on in your country. Forget about political stuff, just during a natural disaster, even that alone. Get them to see the need. And say, look, make sure your medics got the stuff they need to patch holes in you. Not put holes in you, patch holes in you. If you got medics, how many medics are in this audience right here? Where are my medics at? 1, 2, where are they at? Where's the other medic at? So we got at least 2. You need more medics. Okay, 3. Got 3 medics. So if this were a group right here that was anticipating being together during some crisis, I'd ask you, do the medics have the stuff they need to patch holes in you? If the answer is no, if you haven't geared them up, why not? All of you guys are out there running around these gun shows, huge long lines wrapped around the building buying guns and ammo because you're worried about what's going on in our country. And you're worried about your Second Amendment being wiped out. If you anticipate ever having to use those things, you'd better make sure these guys have the stuff they need to patch the holes that are going to happen when you use them. It seems really basic to me, but how much medical supplies do you have? You better have the stuff. I mean, look, when I was in the infantry, every guy carried his own pressure bandage. And nowadays, they've got their own tourniquet, maybe in their own cell locks on them. They got their own individual kit. The medic uses what's on you. You can't rely on him to bring all that crap with him. He's going to use what's on you to supplement what he has in his stomp bag or whatever he's got. So make sure you store up supplies for him. If you have a retired doctor in your neighborhood that you happen to meet, when you actually go and meet your neighbors, when you meet a retired doctor, even if that retired doctor is not like on fire to get involved in a neighborhood watch or whatever, why not store away the supplies that he will be able to use? He might be a retired ER doc, which would be priceless in a situation, grid down situation. Get him squared away with the stuff he needs. Better yet, if he's willing to actually participate, then you can say, okay, doc, give me a shopping list. If I had a doctor living down the street, I would kiss his butt. That's like a golden, he's like a golden blessing from God. Doc, whatever you need, I will get. I'll find a way to get it for you. If you want a field hospital, I'll get you a field hospital. So, point being, what I suggest you do is consider a neighborhood watch, square one. If you don't already have a neighborhood watch right now, whatever else you're doing, stop. Get your neighborhood watch established. If you have to wind up being a leader of yourself, fine. Take that responsibility and do it. How to do it? I think one of the best things you can do is just throw a big party for your neighbors. Throw a block party, invite everyone in the neighborhood. Don't say, we're going to get together and discuss emergency preparedness. Just say, hey, we're going to throw a big bash for Halloween. We're going to get drunk. I got a couple of kegs. Like when you were back in college, those of you went to college, or all you guys that hung around military bases too, all you really need to do is get a couple of kegs of beer and the guys come running. So just throw a big party, and then you get to know your neighbors. Get to know them over a beer, and then while you're talking to them, you'll figure out who the retired police officer is, the firefighter, the retired cop, the retired doctor, all your veterans. You'll figure it out. And while you're talking to these guys, you'll find out the guys that are into hunting and shooting, things like that. You'll get to know them. And then you'll have in your head, okay, that guy over there I want to talk to, that guy there I want to talk to, this one, this one, this one, this one. And then later on you go by and say, hey, I'm Joe Blow from the party. Oh yeah, how's it going? I just want to chat with you a little bit. I'm forming up a neighborhood watch. Want to know if you'd be interested, at least for the purpose of having a way to contact you in case your house is on fire. That's a good way to lead in. I'm putting together, a phone tree list here, so in case you're gone, your house is broken into, your house is on fire, how do I get a hold of you? Oh, okay, here's my cell phone number. Now you got a cell phone number. And then you can say, okay, I know you were retired Army. Are you willing to, what was your MOS again? Oh yeah, you were supply. Are you willing to, help me out figuring out what kind of stuff we're going to need, blah, blah, blah. At least get them willing to give you advice. You don't necessarily have to say, I want you to commit to being this many hours patrolling in a car, but at least he's willing to give advice and help you structure things and be there. Like if you've got a retired medic, you can say, okay, you're a retired medic, I know you're busy and all that, but if we had an emergency here, if for some reason the local paramedics couldn't get here, say there's a tornado that came through here, ripped everything up, are you willing to help out with immediate first aid and trauma right there on the spot? If you are, I'll get you a stomp bag, I'll get you the things you need, and I'll get you a radio so I can always reach you, you can always reach me. So things like that. Build it up from the bottom up. Don't ask for too much from these people, because a lot of your neighbors are kind of lazy. Main thing is you find out who they are, what skills they have. And the ones who are interested, if you go and talk to them and say, oh, I'm not interested, oh, okay, thanks. And you come back like 6 months later, after, like, look at the Colorado floods. A real good example. I'm sure plenty of those folks that lived in that area never thought they'd need emergency services. But look what happened, So, good example. Yes, sir, you had a question?
Real quickly, how would you adapt that party idea for like a school dormitory or an apartment type environment? Can you repeat the question?
How do you adapt that party idea to a school dormitory or apartment environment? You make up a flyer that says, kick butt party at Joe's house at this time, and you go pass it out. That's what I did in my apartment complex in Las Vegas when I wanted to start parties. I had some pretty good parties. Just throw a party, you know? But anyway, so neighborhood watches, I would say, are most critical. A lot of folks who are very politically active, they're on Facebook, they get on there or on chat boards, and they're talking back and forth about all the bad stuff Obama's doing, and they spend half their day doing that, forwarding all kinds of emails. Look what's going on. Look what's going on. Look what's going on. But what are they doing right there in their neighborhood? I would suggest that you put at least 25% or 30% of your non-working energy, your own personal, private, patriot freakout energy, put that into communicating with your neighbors and forming neighborhood watches. Really, folks. Because when the crap hits the fan, what's going to count is what is going on in your neighborhood. Are you organized? Are you prepared? Are you cross-trained? That's what SF does. They'll specialize. They all went to basic training, advanced infantry training, airborne school. Then they'll go to SF selection. They learn land navigation, patrolling, wilderness survival, and then they go do their specialties, weapons, communications, whatever. So they've got a real good base of good skills, then they get their specialties, and then they'll cross-train. So same goes for you. I would suggest that everyone go to an Appleseed shoot, everyone learn how to shoot competently with a rifle, safely. Build your, you should all have light infantry skills. When the crap hits the fan, if you're called to the modern version of the Alamo, you need light infantry skills. It's like in the Marine Corps. In the Marine Corps, is a cook just a cook? Hey, Marines. Every Marine's a rifleman. That's what every American should be like. Every American's a rifleman or riflewoman. So you need those competent skills to safely handle weapons. You do need to learn individual cover and concealment, individual reaction to fire, individual movement. You should also learn buddy team movement. And of course, none of the people are like, oh no, he's talking about, we should all be this big scary militia kind of thing. Every American should have these skills. When the Korean shop owners were dealing with the friggin' horde of looters coming down on them, it would have been nice if they'd have had buddy team skills and fire team skills and squad skills. Don't think that you're living in such a perfect society that you're never going to need those skills. A husband and wife team dealing with a home invasion is a buddy team. You better learn how to coordinate your fire and your movement. You better learn how to move together and shoot together. If I'm reloading, I'm going to yell to my wife, cover me, or I'm checking, or whatever word we've worked out. We use checking. I'm checking. She don't know what I'm doing. All she knows is I ain't shooting. So she knows she's got to be shooting. And then I'll say I'm up, and then she'll say checking or whatever. She wants to reload. So you guys figure out your buddy team procedures. Our enemies have gotten us in many ways to be so afraid of being demonized by them that we self-censor our own language, we self-censor ourselves, and we're limiting ourselves. You need light infantry skills. The heart and soul of the Second Amendment is not about defense against some crack addict in an alley. I'm not worried about a crack addict in an alley. It's not about that. It's about your military capacity to fulfill your role as the militia. So your hierarchy of training, just like with SF, you better be competent at those basic infantry skills, but then you got to pick a specialty, and once you do that, then you cross-train. So in your family, if you're, like I said, my son's going to go down and get his ham license, he'll be the specialist for radios. I'll never get as good as he will be on radios, and I'll be the specialist for emergency medical, but then we'll cross-train. Everyone in the family will at least know how to run the radio and have a good handheld. Everyone will at least know how to put a tourniquet on themselves or someone else and put some cell locks in there. They'll at least know the basics of how to stop bleeding and clear airways and whatnot. But then we'll get the advanced knowledge and cross-train. Understand that? So neighborhood watches are critical. But I'd say the other big one would be your local veterans groups. They are a unit. If you can go there, all you veterans who belong to VFW, American Legion, Marine Corps League, it should be one of your prime missions to get your brothers in that hall squared away. When I go talk to a veterans hall, I am not going there to try to recruit them into Oath Keepers. That is not my perspective. I'm not going there to say, oh, y'all, you're not keeping your oath, you should be an Oath Keeper. That's bullshit. I'm going in there to light a fire under them to see themselves as a unit and get squared away as a hall. Because when they do that, imagine, this is a thought experiment, There's a VFW hall in almost every town across America, almost every town across Texas, for example. Imagine if every VFW hall had a base station ham radio with a nice tower on it, had portable hams in their vehicles, like 50-watt ham radios, and had handheld dual band radios. What is that right there? That's your statewide emergency communications network right there. At the town level and even operational. When they go out in their trucks, they can still communicate. If they're on foot, they can still communicate. That's emergency combo right there. And also imagine that if you take that same concept and the American Legion's doing it, and the Marine Corps League is doing it, and what's the other one out there? The Disabled Veterans America is doing it. Imagine if all of them are doing it. And if you're older and injured, like where's Don Rutledge at? Where you at, Don? Don's pretty broke up. He'll tell you himself. He just got in a big bad car wreck. But you're a mechanic in the military, right? Right. He can fix almost anything that runs. So even if you're kind of broken up and you're not able to go out there with a backpack on your back and run around in the woods anymore, so what? You're the training cadre to pass those skills on. You should be doing all you can to replicate yourself, pass on those skills. So our motto for that is each one teach one. Whatever your specialty was in the military, duplicate yourself. Pick an apprentice, some younger guy, bring him in under your wing and teach him everything you know. Replicate yourself. And you're also there as support. Maybe Don can't go running around in the woods, but what he can do is he can fix our vehicles to keep us running. He could be out there, he could drive a truck, he could be there as support. So all you older guys, you're not off the hook. That's why I told you that Sammy Whitmore story. You're still on the hook. You're there as the support structure. The field teams are the guys who are fitter, who can go out, or ladies too, who can go out in the fields. Those are the field teams. So look at that model within your own VFW hall as well. You might have an old Korean War veteran. A lot of the Vietnam guys are getting a little bit old. It's okay. You've got a whole new crop of Iraq and Afghanistan veterans coming in, thanks to Uncle Sam. So now we have all these young guys who can run around and do all that stuff. The older guys, you're there to support them. Teach them, pass on the skills, make sure they got all the gear they need, all the food they need, all the medical supplies they need, back them up. Now, what about your local sheriff's department? I want you to think about it in this terms. It's like two pillars going up. One side is what we've just been talking about, what you can do as a private citizen, yourself, your family, your neighborhood, your church, your veterans hall, all private. The other pillar is public. What can you do in the public or quasi-public pillar? And that includes your volunteer fire department, your search and rescue, your sheriff's auxiliary, your police auxiliary, your reserve deputy programs, and your sheriff's posse. If you don't have a sheriff's posse, once again, start one. Very critical. Some sheriffs are afraid of the word posse, and some of them will use reserve deputies instead. Who cares what they call it? It's unpaid volunteer who's willing to assist. Some of them have them work like in Flathead County, Montana. It's the posse of volunteers, unpaid volunteers, who walks around during all the rodeos and state fairs and stuff. That's who does that. So how about right here in this county? What county is this? Dallas. You guys got a posse here? No?
Texas law works differently.
What's that?
Texas law works differently.
So yeah, what would you call them around here then?
The problem is the sheriff can only shun an aid when he has resistance that he can't overcome with his own resources.
But does he have a reserve deputy program?
Yeah, you have to be a licensed police officer.
Okay.
You have to be a licensed police officer to be a reserve deputy in Texas.
So you got to go through posts and all that? Okay. So, you know, there's more than one way to skin a cat. There was a sheriff in Utah who was a good sheriff, but he had kind of the same kind of problem. He's like, well, I have to get permission from the county commissioner before I can start an actual posse or reserve. And so he said, my hands are kind of tied. So I said, well, the answer to that is all of you just go start neighborhood watches, and you invite the sheriff over for Kool-Aid or whatever. They don't drink coffee in Utah. So invite him over for Kool-Aid, and now you know he gets to meet all the captains, all the block captains. That's his wink, wink, nudge, nudge militia or sheriff's posse. When he needs them, they're there. So, you know, here in Texas, you might figure out a different way to do it. It might wind up being the neighborhood watches with close coordination with the sheriff, or if you have a good one, you know, or the police chief becomes your other way of doing it. So, but if you can do it, whatever's there, animate it. Whatever's there, join it. I mean, about volunteer fire. You guys got volunteer fire here? Huh? You do? Right. You should be in the volunteer fire department. any of you, unless you are physically incapable of doing it, should belong to the volunteer fire department. I do. I'm a lawyer. I'm pretty dang busy, but I still go do it. Don't tell me you haven't got time. Pick something. Search and rescue, volunteer fire, get search certified. You know, go down there. One of our guys from Ohio, he never served in the military, but he wanted to do his part, and so he wanted to become a first responder. And he went and took every CERT class available. He's taken like 200 CERT classes now. He's kind of gone overboard about it, but point being is the feds will give you free training. They'll train you in hazardous material response. They'll train you in all kinds of stuff, communications, etc. Take advantage of it. Go get CERT certified. I think a lot of these classes are available online. We'll post, as we go forward with Oath Keepers in this program, we'll post a lot of this on our website. So you got two pillars. One's private, what you can do as private individuals, and the other one's public, what you can do through the public institutions. Whatever's available there, every place is a little bit different, but whatever's available, join it, make it stronger. If you can start something that's not there, like say you don't have a search and rescue team, and you know you should, start it, okay? Do what you can. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, though. I think it's a mistake to rely on the politicians to ever grow a brain in time to get ready for what's coming. So what is coming in this country? Well, in a nutshell, I'll say this. We have two great freight trains bearing down on us at the same time. One of them is a constitutional crisis. We have a government that is displaying its intent to treat us exactly the same as King George treated your forefathers. Same kind of mindset. They can make any rule over you whatsoever they want to. They can spy on you. You have no privacy. They can disarm you if they want to. They claim all they have to do is pass some goofy law, and all of a sudden your right to bear arms is now nullified. On down the list. They can detain you under military combatant status without a jury trial, as has been done to 2 U.S. citizens so far. Or they can even just kill you. That's what they claim the power to do. The president claims the power to use his power as commander-in-chief on the American people exactly the same as if you were an Iraqi goat herder in Iraq. I'm not joking.
They've basically done all that already.
Right. Well, they claim the authority, and they've actually done it overseas, but they haven't done it here yet. But there is no, I'll tell you, there's no legal difference between you and Al-Awlaki. You might think there is, but there's not. Right. Well, I think Hastings might have gotten, designated as an enemy combatant, right. So anyway, point being, even if you set aside what we suspect is their intent, and what we suspect that they're doing, the things that you can see right there on the front of the New York Times and the Washington Post are already bad enough to know that their intent is not good. Why are they spending billions of dollars buying hollow point ammunition? Why are they spending billions of dollars on MRAPs and positioning them all over the country? Why? Are they really worried about Al-Qaeda? Is that all for Al-Qaeda? No, it's for you. Like Patrick Henry said, what are this massing of troops in the colonies for? Is there any enemy in this quarter of the world that would justify this? And his answer was no, they are meant for us. They can be meant for no other. And we're in the same position. So, and of course, the biggest problem, this is what woke me up when I was a student at Yale Law School, was the claims of power in the name of national security, post 9/11. Big time scary claims of power. Anybody who's a student of history will see the parallels. In Nazi Germany, one of the first things they did when the Nazis took over is they nationalized all the police. The police traditionally, in each province, criminal matters were a provincial, local matter only, under the command and control of the local system. They nationalized all the police, put them under direct control of the Gestapo. That's what they did. In this country, what's our counterpart? DHS. And much the same thing's happening. Increasingly, they're federalizing or semi-federalizing police officers and making it much more of a top-down command and control from Washington, D.C., all in the name of war on terrorism. Another big thing the Nazis did is they set up what they call people's courts, which were special courts staffed or crammed with Nazi judges who would always rule in favor of the state. And then you did not have a normal trial. You were a political opponent, you got a special trial in the people's court. And then off to the concentration camps you went, if you're lucky. This is what's being set up now in this country. All of those claimed powers of the president to apply the laws of war to Americans, which are entirely unconstitutional, direct violation of Article 3 of the Constitution, and in particular Article 3, Section 3 of the Treason Clause. I encourage you to go read it and study it. The other big freight train bearing down on us is an economic freight train. Anybody who believes you can continue to print money out of nothing indefinitely and it's all going to be okay is not paying attention to history. I encourage you to go read a book. It's called When Money Dies. It's all about Weimar Republic Germany and the hyperinflation that happened in Germany, Austria, and Hungary after World War I. They tried to pay off the reparations and their war debt by inflating their currencies, and they wound up killing their own currencies through hyperinflation. And what happened there is a big wake-up call and warning to you what can happen here. Even when the farmers in the rural countryside of Germany still had food, they stopped shipping it into the cities. Now why? Why should they? Why should they ship food that actually has real value into a city in exchange for German marks, which were increasingly worthless? And in fact, every day are becoming exponentially more worthless. So they didn't. They kept the food, they ate it themselves, or they bartered with it, they traded among each other. And the city folks had to go out into the country, bring in grand pianos, trade them for a bag of potatoes, bring in all the family silver for a bag of potatoes because they had to eat or they'd starve to death. So even when there's food, if you have an economic breakdown, you have a breakdown in transport of food. And think about this country right now compared to what it was like during the Great Depression. My grandma and grandpa made it through the Great Depression because they had a garden, and my grandpa fished. He fished every day, went down to the river and fished. That's how they made it. A lot of Americans, and you know what I'm talking about, most of them don't even know what the heck a fish is or where you'd find one.
McDonald's.
Food, yeah, maybe there you go. Do they still have those there? That's where they'd go. They'd go to McDonald's for a fish sandwich. They think that food comes out of the truck. Don't even think that. They think food comes out of Walmart. And they don't even realize it comes out of a truck actually every day. And they don't realize beyond that that truck has to go, thousands of miles sometimes to bring that food in. Most Americans are incapable right now of providing their own food. And this is one thing I want to close with before I take questions and answers. During the Cold War, this nation had a strategic food reserve of 3 years' worth of food. There was enough food in the hands of the U.S. government to feed every man, woman, and child in the country for 3 years during the Cold War. Why? What was it for? Huh? Yeah, if we got nuked. If you had a nuclear exchange with the Soviet Union, they understood that it could take 3 years to be able to grow crops enough again to feed everybody. So it was a military necessity that they had that kind of food storage. Now, what amount is left of that strategic grain reserve? Do you all know?
0.
I think last time I looked at it was enough to feed each one of you a half a loaf of bread. That's it. So wow. Like I said, Uncle Sam is not spending billions of dollars, they should be, on getting ready to feed you during an economic collapse or any other catastrophe. Right now, they're poking a stick at Putin. You don't think there's a chance he might poke back? And yet, they've left us with no grain reserve. But they're buying billions of dollars worth of ammo. Your government is not going to do it, unfortunately. Not in Washington, D.C. But it is still a military necessity that you have that grain reserve, but we don't have it. So that means right now, the American people are in a strategic checkmate position because of the lack of that food reserve. And in fact, China right now has its fingers sitting over an economic neutron bomb. All they'd have to do is sell off the remaining U.S. holdings and treasuries. All they'd have to do is tell all their trading partners, we will no longer accept U.S. dollar as a currency of trade for any of our transactions. They've already decoupled from the dollar with mutual trade agreements with what? Russia, Brazil, India, China, the BRIC nations, and now Australia. There's a bilateral trade agreement between China and Australia. Whenever they trade, they no longer use dollars. So the dollar is already no longer the world reserve currency for those transactions. But all they'd have to do is dump it for good. And it would be just like what happened to the German mark. You could tell them all about that, right? Jim can tell you all about it. Yeah, am I right? Yeah. So they could do that. How long would it take, you think, if China did that, sold off all its U.S. treasuries and mandated that all trade with China must be done with the yuan or some other currency? What would be the effect and how fast would it go?
Well,
let's say that Obama
Here.
Hold on, he's going to give you a mic.
Let's just say tomorrow Obama comes on the television and says, because of the current economic crisis, I'm going to call for a 3-day bank holiday. Okay, for 3 days, you know, say starting tomorrow, over the weekend, Monday, Tuesday, it's back in business. Sounds like a nothing deal. You know, all you got to do is sit tight for 3 or 4 days. But what that means is you can't cash a check, you can't deposit money, you can't withdraw money, you can't use an ATM, you can't use a credit card. And the minute that happens, the people who have not been paying attention are going to panic, run to the store, the shelves are going to start emptying, and then people are going to see that. And then within probably 4 to 6 hours, Walmart, the grocery stores are going to be empty, and then everybody else is going to panic, and the whole thing will come down.
Right. But what about, like, say, if China wanted to use economics as a weapon of war and kill the dollar?
Well, we'd be gone because the dollar's not based on anything but our nuclear bombs.
And how fast could that go?
I don't know, 24 hours.
Yeah, like you just said. So what he's talking about is what you see behind a hurricane, right? A hurricane is coming, everyone runs down and tears the stores apart, or we just saw inside of some of our commissaries, arena commissaries, on military bases because of shutdown. A lot of the housewives kind of freaked out, went down there and cleaned all the shelves out. So there's not much on the shelves. In Germany, in Argentina, another good example, 2001 hyperinflation in Argentina, they lost about 75% of their value of their money within a few days, 4 or 5 days. They lost that value, right? So these are the historic examples you should go look at. Point being, because we don't have food reserves, whether it's an economic strike like that, or whether it's some other disaster that interrupts our power system, any kind of delivery system for our food, you could have mass chaos in this country pretty quick. And we saw that during Katrina, but just imagine a nationwide Katrina. And when it comes to our mission for the current serving, why this worries us is because we saw during Katrina where guys who should have known better obeyed unconstitutional orders, I think in large part because they perceived it as a real emergency. And so the same thing goes for your community. The military and the police are much more likely to go along with unconstitutional orders, like orders to confiscate your guns, if they see it as being a real emergency. And a lot of guys, unfortunately, have it in their head that, well, when there's a real emergency, you got to suspend the Constitution. Like I was on Bill O'Reilly's show, and he was defending the gun confiscation during Katrina as being necessary because it was an emergency. He is an idiot. But point being, he's a reflection of the common understanding in America. The Constitution was written for emergency. These guys had just got done fighting a friggin' Revolutionary War. They understood war and emergency, and they provided for it. But a lot of Americans have it in their head. Even a lot of police officers and military have it in their head that, well, when there's an emergency, the president can declare martial law. Where's that in the Constitution? Where's the term martial law in the Constitution? It's not there.
Right next to the word muskets.
It's not there, right. It doesn't exist. It's not constitutional. There is no justification and no constitutional method for setting aside the protections of your rights because of an emergency. It doesn't exist. And the reason is because during an emergency is precisely when you need your rights, because that's when you're scared. So what we want to do is remove the pretext. There are plenty of oath-breaking politicians who would love nothing better than to cause chaos. What did Rahm Emanuel say? Never let a crisis go to waste. They would love nothing better than to take advantage of a crisis situation, whether they caused or not, to increase their power and decrease your rights. So it's up to you and your own community to make sure you are squared away so you remove that pretext. The police and military are much more likely to say no if you're squared away. If you're all organized already, your neighborhood watches, your veterans halls, sheriff posse or auxiliary, you're already squared away, it's much more likely the police and military will be like, hey, Mr. President, they don't need our help, they don't want our help, why are you telling us to go in there and take their guns? Why? You're much more likely that they'll say no. So don't just expect them to do the right thing and you get to go back to watching Dancing with the Stars. The two work together. You got to get yourself squared away and then back them up. If some guy's active duty Army or National Guard, he wants to know that you're squared away in his hometown, so his mom and dad are taken care of, so his wife and kids are taken care of. The two work together. You got to do it, folks. Right, so that's basically our program. Continue to reach out to the current serving, but to do all we can, as fast as we can, to get our communities squared away. Now, I ain't got a crystal ball. I can't tell you when the dollar's gonna die. I know it will, but I think you should presume the worst and work in 4-month sprints. Pretend, act as if you only had 4 months. How squared away can you get in 4 months? That helps you cut out all the unnecessary nonsense, okay? Focus on what you can do in a 4-month sprint. If at the end of that 4 months, everything's still okay, okay, great. Regroup, take a good look at your checklist. What do we still need to do? Where are our deficiencies? Where's our weak points? Let's fill those holes. Another 4-month sprint, and then do it again. All of you need to be training. Consider yourself part of a group. Consider yourself a team leader. Form at least a buddy team. Your basic question for yourself should be, who's on my buddy team? Who's on my fire team? Who's on my squad? Who's in my platoon? Not on the internet, right here, in physical space. Who's your buddy team, fire team, squad, and platoon? And get on it. And don't cut out the civilians. You guys who were prior military, you might have somebody who's been in construction his entire life. That's a good guy to have on the engineering team. Might have a retired nurse. She's a great gal to have on the medical team. Bring her in, okay? Any questions on any of that stuff?
If you have questions.
Yeah, any questions, just let me know.
You.
Right back behind you there's a question. Oh, you got one? Okay.
So, hello.
Hey.
The security question, it seems pretty straightforward. You know, you set up perimeters and da-da-da-da. The economic crisis is going to be harder to prepare for on a neighborhood and
sure.
setting. What does your program address that at all?
Oh, sure. Actually, I mean, the team thing is kind of the latest version of what we've already had going on, which was called Operate Sleeping Giant, and that had 4 planks, and we'll still use that. The top priority was preparedness. Got to have food, got to have clean water, etc. You know, all we've been talking about. Second category was security. Got to have that too. Third category was economic independence. When you know your government is already destroying your economy, and of course their answer to this is going to be a worldwide Fed. They've already told us. They'll like, oh no, a nation-state Federal Reserve and central bank. The problem was it wasn't big enough, and so they want to have a worldwide Fed. So yes, the third plank is economic security and independence, and that would be barter networks. That'd be using silver and gold again. If you can get your legislature to pass a sound money bill, that'd be great. You know, things like that. But you certainly want to grow your own food. You want to support your local farmers and your farmers co-ops. You want to support your local merchants. Get your economy here locally as strong as possible. Texas has a lot of resources. You got a lot. So, but really think of in terms of, do I want to shop at Walmart? Do I want to shop at a Texas-owned grocery store? Think in terms of that. And another good thing to think about is also, what's your liberty skill? What's your liberty trade? Like in a basic economy, say a grid down situation, or like wind up in Argentina or Germany, you know, a real basic economy, local economy, what skill do you have that's marketable? What would you be doing? You know, on a frontier town, what was it? You know, it was the baker, the blacksmith, the doctor, the dentist. Usually it was both. It was the barber wound up doing all that stuff. So someone is doing those basic functions, right? What is your skill? Like Don, he's a mechanic. He can fix almost anything. That's a marketable skill, no matter what's going on. Some of you guys have other skills, electronics, medical. You're a medic, right? You want to be in your town doctor probably in a real bad grid down situation. So think of your terms of, you know, what do I have that I could offer the community in a real basic economy? And start thinking about that. Computer programmer, maybe, you know. Some things, English professor, probably not, you know. But think about that. So, you know, you want to make your local economy as resilient as you can make it, as strong locally. Because once again, if trucks are not running all the way across the country in a grid down situation, you're talking about barter pretty much. You know, barter and skill exchange and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, any other questions? Yes.
Hello. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, one more thing about that. So, first one is preparedness, security, economic independence, and the fourth one is sovereignty. And that includes like nullification, state nullification, even local, constitutional sheriffs, things like that. Okay. Yes, sir.
We don't have the military rolling down our streets or UN troops, but we do have a lot of SWAT raids and warrantless searches going on, busting down of doors and people getting shot and killed. I'm just wondering how you how do you defend against that when they have superior firepower and the law on their side?
Well, the first thing you need to do is, once again, like I said, stop relying only on professional. This is one of the downsides to relying only on professional class to protect you. And if you form neighborhood watches and you start to be the local security, it removes the reasoning and rationale for having that kind of militarized police. And the other thing, of course, would be to, you have a lot of work to do to put the genie back in the bottle, you know? So it would probably mean a new town council, a new police chief. I mean, SWAT teams should only be used when you've got a barricaded suspect or a hostage situation. That's why we protested against the use of SWAT teams to serve a search warrant down in Arizona against the Marine veteran Jose Herrera. Why did they do that? Like Sheriff Mack pointed out, they could have got him, he worked at the mine all night on Graveyard. They could have gone and just said, hey, sit tight right here while we search your house. Or they could have pulled him over on the way home from work. They knew where he worked. There was no reason for that. It's kind of like with the Waco raid here you guys had. What is the rationale for going in like that? It's unnecessary. And the only rationale for it is, well, either with ATF it was, we got a big budget thing coming up, we got to justify ourselves. But the other part of it is, well, hey, we got this big old hammer, everything looks like a friggin' nail. And it has spread. It used to be SWAT was only used in certain situations. Now they're used routinely. And it has gone out of control. It does not show due respect for the Second Amendment or the Fourth Amendment. I don't know, when all of a sudden a bunch of yelling, cussing, screaming guys come through my door, how do you know if it's the police or it's MS-13? You don't know. You have no friggin' way to know. And you're caught in a catch-22. If you don't defend yourself, and it turns out to be a home invasion by a bunch of gangbangers, they torture you, rip your wife, kill her, kill you. If you do defend yourself, and it turns out to be the SWAT team, they're gonna kill you before you even know who it is. Because in their head, they enter the room, they see man with gun, they shoot man with gun. In your mind, you're trying to figure out, is it good guy with gun or bad guy with gun? You're already behind the power curve, behind the time curve. So, it's not good. It is not consistent with our liberty. So, short term, I'd say harden your home. Make it so that they can't just do that to you and they have to act like civilized human beings. But unless you're a barricaded suspect or you got a hostage, they shouldn't be using SWAT team money like that. And so I oppose it. And our chapter presidents here will oppose it too. They're in the same position. Jay Stang here is our state chapter president. He's a Marine veteran. His dad was the infamous anti-communist Alan Stang. Jay would tell you the same thing. He was pissed off as a Marine when he saw that. They gave no respect to a man defending his home. So before we even knew whether he was clean or dirty, it didn't matter. No SWAT team should be entering an American's home like that just to serve a search warrant. You're not guilty until you're proven guilty. Until then, you're innocent. They should treat you like a human being. So we do oppose that. But, you know, it's a tough road to hoe. What else can I say? Your police officers need to understand that's not acceptable behavior from them. They have to understand that. Okay? All right. And another good example of unacceptable behavior is going on right now in Washington, D.C. with the Veterans Memorials being shut down. And we just called on all our guys, you know, it's absolutely intolerable. I took a World War II vet on an honor flight last year from Montana. When those guys go on those honor flights, that's their last trip. They're not going back again. They can't do a redo because Obama doesn't want, he's on a temper tantrum, wants to shut down the memorial. No, it's their last trip. So anybody, that's an example where I think it's worth saying hell no and kicking down the damn barricades and going in. So you got to start somewhere. You know, you got to start somewhere. And those World War II vets showed us the way. They just said, what? I ain't doing this. You know, and you know what's kind of funny about honor flights? When you go on an honor flight, you escort them, they do not go through TSA. They do not go through that. You know why they don't go through that? Because they wouldn't put up with it.
They wouldn't do it.
So they go around all that nonsense. They don't grope them. They don't scan them naked in a scanner. They don't do any of that crap to these guys. They go get on a plane like decent human beings, and they fly. And we flew with them that same way.
Hey, Stuart.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Reed's going.
Reed's going to be there tomorrow.
Yep.
Are you?
Yep.
You're on an honor flight for Texas?
Negative. I'm flying out to Ohio, and me and an Army buddy are driving into D.C. to go kick out.
Excellent. Good deal. I mean, there were already veterans who wanted to do that, but I got a call the other night about these veterans. It was New York that got arrested because they were there past curfew.
Yeah.
Some kind of crazy crap like that. So I was like, that's enough of that. So we told our guys, we'll start with the World War II Memorial and the Iwo Jima Memorial too. Anywhere the honor flights go in D.C., they go to World War II, they go to Korea, they go to Iwo Jima, they go to the Vietnam Veterans Wall, they go to Arlington Cemetery. I told my guys, you put yourself under the command of the World War II vets. Whatever they want you to do, you do it. You go there, they're your friggin' CO. They're your platoon sergeant. You put yourselves under their command. Whatever they want to do, you do it. Tear down the damn barricades. Enough said. Anyway, point is, folks, is that what do you do when you got a machine bearing down on you that has no respect for you whatsoever? You know? At some point, I prefer, and where's Gunter at? Gunter Spence right here. Stand up, say hi, Gunter. Gunter, say hi, Gunter.
Hi, I'm Gunter Spence.
He was a lieutenant colonel in the East German Army. And he was there in 1989. He was a colonel at the time when the wall came down and reunified East Germany and West Germany. And in his interview, he's a good man. And his interview is on our front page of our website. I did an interview with him about what happened. In a nutshell, what happened is by the end, 80 to 90% of the German people had had enough of living under communism. They knew how illegitimate it was, they knew how evil it was, how corrupt it was. And they could see right next door in Western Germany what freedom looked like. So they knew it was bull, and they were sick of it. And it wasn't just the people, it was also the army, because the army came from the people. And so at the end there, the Communist Party didn't realize it, and the Stasi secret police didn't realize it, but their days were numbered. And so when the people rose up finally and demanded the wall came down in peaceful demonstrations, at the end there, the Communist Party ordered the army to go and crush the protests. And they said no. The commander of the army said, nope, not going to do it. We're all staying on base. And without their support, how long do you think the Stasi lasted after that, without the support of the army? 3 days later, the wall came down.
That's right.
Because without the support of the military, they couldn't do it. The secret police cannot stop the people in any country. And that's my answer to all, any guys, you get sometimes we get like these letters and emails, oh, the military, the Army, Marine Corps, they'll just do whatever they're told. And it's like, oh no. If the friggin' East Germans can do the right thing, raised under communism, before that, they were Nazis. If they can figure out the right thing, do you think the U.S. Marine Corps can figure it out? Or the U.S. Army?
Yeah.
Or the Air Force and Navy? Sure they can.
Oh, yeah.
So never forsake them. Never forsake them. But anyway, the point being, that'd be the best outcome. But as Gunter will tell you, we're in many ways, we're worse off than East Germans were. Because we don't have an 80% or 90% of the population who's awake and aware of what's going on. And so we're in much more like what the Founding Fathers were dealing with, where they had half the country was patriot, half the country was loyalist. So we're in a bit worse place. There's the chance, and I think the inevitable actually, given enough time, because of the freedom of the internet and talk radio and the freedom I'm using right now and you are using to associate with each other, because of that freedom of speech in alternate media, there is, in the end, a chance we could wake up 80 or 90% of the American people, and it could go that way. But what we're concerned about is that before that happens, the bad guys will realize that there is an awakening happening right now. There is. More and more Americans are waking up every day. Kerry signing that stupid UN treaty just woke up a bunch of more people. Obama shutting down the World War II Memorial and pissing all the vets off, and trying to shut down the Iwo Jima Memorial. All that does is wake up more people and piss them off, which is good, frankly.
I think they're testing the water.
But we might not make it to that 90%. So if we don't, is where you need to be ready for the reality that it might go down more like what happened in 1775 and 1776 than 1989 East Germany. We're still trying to get to 1989 East Germany. That's why it's critical that you get squared away in your own neighborhoods now. It's not enough to say, when the time comes, I'll go get my rifle out of my closet and I'm ready. You have to be getting your stuff squared away now in your neighborhoods and build the awareness and the spirit of resistance in your community. I hope we can still stop it without having to fight. But I'm not going to count on that. So that's why you get ready as much as you can. The Founding Fathers, they didn't just wait until the day happened to show up with their rifles. Some guys did, like Samuel Whitmore, but the rest of them were training in Minuteman companies, training in militias. They had town hall meetings. They had all kinds of associations they created. They worked as communities in a very public way. And they also had their secret Sons of Liberty organization. They used both tactics. So I suggest you learn from their example. Hey, Gunter, did you want to say something real quick?
Yeah.
You go ahead. Let Gunter talk for a second first. Take the microphone.
About the army, I was in the headquarters of the Third Army, Lieutenant Colonel at this time, and we had 522 officers in the headquarters. 20%, for my opinion, would strongly support not to follow the order, go against their own people. Only 20%. 60%, I guess, about this, you would say, hopefully no one will ask me, and you would be on the right side. And 20% were hardcore communists who would say, we have to fulfill any order. This were only 20%. And so the decision was from our commander, every soldier stays tonight in the base. And this was the end of the power of the party. 3 days later, they said, the wall came down, the Stasi disappeared.
They're all running and hiding and tearing off their insignia.
Do you know what's coming? The only power, the real power, was the army. The Stasi had about 10,000 very well armed, let's say soldiers, not the army, Stasi. That was nothing against the army. And the police stood out, completely out, had nothing to do with it. So it was done. Would the army have a different decision? This would be a civil war or something like this. It would be worse like this. And this did not happen. So it was over. But as Stuart said, about 80%, maybe more, had enough and said, no, we do not want this anymore. Don't think the 80% go on the street. 1% at the end was on the street, which is a lot. But not the 80. But the 80 was the power behind, because it's the same. And when you start going against this 1%, you have no idea what may happen. So they could not do it. And they had no idea what the army will do. So even the party had a big problem. They could not use their power anymore.
What's that?
The party could not use their power anymore.
Right.
They had long time absolute power, and this was over, and they realized it's over. Therefore, the Stasi was prepared to disappear. They started before.
So it's an important point. They had their, like the SS, it was in Germany, they had to select battalions of dedicated hardcore troops who were very loyal. But, how many did they have?
About 10,000.
About 10,000. But that was no match for the army. And so when the army said, we're not going to get involved, that was a vote of no confidence in the regime. And even these select, well-vetted loyalist troops knew that if they turned on the people, the army was going to kick their asses. And this isn't a population.
For sure.
This isn't a population of unarmed people. So now you add in the factor of Americans being armed and all the veterans, and how's that change it?
Yeah, and by the way, this was a revolution in East Germany, and no one in all the states in East Europe, no one had guns in none of the states. And they brought the party out of power without any gun, no blood, not even a broken window.
But they had the guns in the army that were sitting there waiting to see what was going to happen. Right. So we're in a worse position as far as the amount of awareness, but we're in a far better position because of the fact that we are armed. So there's, it's some things are good, some things are bad. But what do you see right now, Gunther? If you look, you've seen this before. What do you see right now in America?
The main problem I see is, as you mentioned, here are not 80% on the right side. Maybe 12% are about the politics of the government now at the moment, because they get their food stamps, they get something for free, and wake them up. And it was completely different because Germany was divided after World War II. So the families were separated, one in the east, in the west. The contacts were there. We had all the TV, the radio stations, we could get it in East Germany from West Germany. And by the Constitution of West Germany, every German was a citizen of West Germany. So when you could make it go over, you were home. And you watch it because most had family on the other side.
So they knew.
Exactly.
They knew what the truth was.
It's much easier than here.
Yeah. So what do you, given that we don't have that kind of awareness in our country, what's your assessment of where we're at?
I mean, you cannot take your gun in the street and start a revolution. This will not work. Because the situation is not there. It is there when you have a lot of people behind you at least support you. Even they go not on the street. Spreading the word and being prepared is probably the most important. And then you hear your community, you work with the sheriff, with police. When you work with the sheriff, work with the police, you work together. They will not go against you. They will stay with you on your side. So when you work with them, it's a huge help. And also the police and the sheriffs will see, the law enforcement will see, oh, the people are okay, they are good, they're taking care of the community. So you have a much better situation, and they cannot use the law enforcement against you, because they will not do this.
If you can do that, if you can break down the barrier that is being intentionally created, artificial barrier between the police and the people, that's being done intentionally to make the police fear the people, make the people fear the police. If you can tear that down to the local level, then that counters their plans. They want to use the police as these little pencil-neck, panty-waisted metrosexuals in D.C. are not going to come to your door in body armor with an M4. Now, they want to send a guy like that, or like I used to be, you know. They want to send some young, strong guy in a local SWAT team to come and do it. That's their force multiplier. They want to use him as their muscle. And so that's why you need to work on your local police to get them to understand that they're Americans too. Their kids are going to grow up here, and are they going to be free or slaves? That's the question. And so they got to decide what they're going to do.
Invite the police to your neighborhood watch party.
Oh yeah. And let them know that, look, as long as you do the right thing, we will back you 100%. Let them know that so they don't feel like they're all by themselves. As an example, look at Sheriff Arpaio down in Arizona. 3,000-man posse. Holder, Obama, they could be as mad at him as they want to, but they can't just go arrest Arpaio. They can't just go send some snatch team to go get him. There'd be a 3,000-man posse. It might turn into a modern-day Concord, and they know that. That's the answer. If you are united as a people in your local community, it takes away the effectiveness of secret police snatch teams. If you're all ready to help each other and support each other, it takes away that ability. And a good example that's going on right now is down in Michoacan in Mexico, where the people are being terrorized by the cartels down there. And they looked around and said, wait a minute, 90 cartel members are terrorizing a town of 25,000 people. This makes no sense. And they finally got their act together. And it was actually at a ranchers meeting. The cartel was trying to take over the local ranching board for the ranchers, the landowners. And they finally had enough. And they rose up against them. Now they hunt them down because there's way more of them than there are the cartels. There's more good guys than bad guys. So whether you're talking about cartel bad guys or masked secret police, Stasi type bad guys, they can take you down in the middle of the night, just you and your family, you're laying in your underwear, but they cannot take down an entire community. It cannot be done. So that's the answer. So all these guys are like, oh, all you're doing is making it easier for them to know who the patriots are. Okay. The founders didn't just organize the secret cells. They organized in very public militias. And so when Gage wanted to go arrest Sam Adams and John Hancock, he couldn't do it with a handful of officers. He had to send entire companies of infantry. And he still got his butt kicked by the local militia. It forced him to pull the mask off and show what he really was. So in this country, the modern analogy would be, if they ever decided to declare martial law and try to come snatch all the patriot leaders or whatever and send a secret police out there, if the people rose up in mutual aid and self-defense, it would not work. The secret police can never overpower you, okay? Like in Kalispell, Montana, even if they can, and this is not a given, because I know some good cops in Kalispell, even if the local SWAT team went in there along with DHS and tried to take down folks in Kalispell, all it would take is that one veterans hall of 500 VFW guys put a stop to it. Could not defeat them. And then you add in all the hunters and all the guys who just got back from Iraq and Afghanistan who don't even belong to the VFW because they're going to college or whatever. Can't be done. If you stand up together, it cannot be done. That forces them to try to pull out the active duty Marine Corps and Army. If you could force them to try to have no choice but to use the Army or the Marine Corps on you, then you wind up at the 1989 East Germany scenario. Do you really think that all the U.S. Army is going to do what they're told? Oh no.
I didn't even do it when I was in.
But they already have a problem right now, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. So they're not all going to do what they're told. What did he just tell you? Even in East Germany, you had 20% who will do whatever they're told. You had 20% who were adamantly opposed and ready to fight them. They already had a split. They had no more unit cohesion on the side of the state. And then they had a bunch in the middle kind of going, what the hell's going on? That's how it goes. That's just human nature. Okay? Anything else you want to add?
No, but sometimes it's a military unit when it gets an order against the Constitution, one of the 10, for example, in our card here. It needs sometimes only one sergeant or one in the unit who says, hey, we are Americans, we don't shoot our own people, it's against the Constitution. And even without the Constitution, we will not shoot Americans. And the other said, actually yes, I will not do this, this could be my family. Yeah? So right. One can be enough when we have this one on our side, and he considers what order he got, yeah?
Yeah. Look at that Apache helicopter pilot I just met the other night. Just imagine someday something's going on and they get called up to go do something, and he's like, oh, I ain't doing this. And he gets on the radio with other Apache helicopter pilots. He's like, guys, we should redirect our mission, you know? So, but point being that there's a good example for Katrina itself. In Katrina, there was a National Guard unit from Utah, and there was a sergeant there, Staff Sergeant Joshua May. His interview is also on our website, and he did exactly that. Because he was in the right place at the right time, he convinced all the other guys in his unit to stand down. They were being deployed into New Orleans, let their commander know ahead of time that we heard what's going on there, and we'll let you know we will not obey those orders. And the whole unit said that. So they did a preemptive stand down all together, once again. And there was no command formation, no dress down, no Article 15s, there was no court martials, nothing, because they all stood up together. If one guy stood up, maybe he might have got hammered, but the one guy swayed all the rest of them. Yeah, yes, ma'am, she had her hand up. Yes, go ahead, go ahead.
Yes.
Okay, and then Jim's got a question too.
I know, he's more important than me in a way.
Okay.
But you know Eric Philpott, he's a pastor, and we're talking about when the shot was heard around the world, that was the Black Robe Regiment, right? Yes. That was pastors getting involved. So that's Absolutely. Another big section. That's Chuck Baldwin.
Oh, sure.
And we have a Black Robe pastor in this area that is an oath keeper.
Good.
And I know he met with you. That's Eric who met with you.
Yes.
And I think that would be very good to encourage him helping other pastors, because these churches are 3,000 to 6,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of retired soldiers in there also.
You bet.
And they're being dumbed down, and they think that they're not supposed to get involved. But if we rekindle that. Okay, that was my
absolutely.
point. That was my point.
And Pastor Baldwin, Chuck Baldwin, is our national chaplain for Oath Keepers.
Right.
And I go to his church whenever I'm in town. I go to his church. He lives in Kalispell too. But you're right. The revolution, like John Adams said many years later, long after he'd been president, he was asked about the American Revolution. He said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Do you mean the war for independence?" Or, because he said the revolution was won in the hearts and minds of the people before the first shot was even fired. And you're right. A lot of it came from the pulpit, came from the pastors, that battle cry of no king but Jesus, came from them understanding this is their natural rights. Legitimate government does not do this. All this Roman 13's nonsense that you must be obedient to government is trash. I recommend you guys go check out Chuck Baldwin's book on that.
Yeah, that's right.
He's got a book on Romans 13 you can go find online.
And another one about the Second Amendment.
Yes,
it just came out.
Yeah, another one
Chuck
also.
Baldwin, and then it's Eric Philpott.
So absolutely. And that's why we put churches down here. Your church should be taking the lead. As Pastor Baldwin said many times, if your pastor is not talking right now about the struggle for freedom right here, then he's not doing his job, and you need a new pastor. And he's right. That's right. Yeah.
Howdy, I'm formerly Sergeant Rock, 36 ID. I just wanted to say that you should exercise your rights just like muscles. If you don't exercise your rights, they go away. If you get pulled over and the cop comes over and says, hey, something smells funny in here, let me search your vehicle. Tell him no, even if you don't have anything on it. Make him sit there and wait and bring the dogs, wait 2 hours. And then he'll think, man, that was dumb. Maybe I shouldn't do that to everybody. Right. It makes for safer communities, and maybe some dumb little 16-year-old kid with a weed sack in the back, maybe he'll get an opportunity to maybe learn his lesson or have a more enlightened cop come ahead and maybe not get run through the system. So that's all I'm trying to say is that. And also, is there a mechanism within Oath Keepers?
You're not on the mic.
Oh, sorry. Is there a mechanism within Oath Keepers for local businesses to get together and network? Because let me tell you something. Your small business owners have access to things at wholesale prices. So, like myself, I'm not going to try to promote my business necessarily, but I sell survival gear. If anybody sells you like knives or some gunsmiths, those kinds of things, need to kind of figure that out. And that's all I've got to say.
Oh, absolutely. And it'd be valuable to have you and other business owners that can contribute to be part of that support team. And like in Montana and Washington State, we're putting together a network of farmers who grow wheat. They're going to give us wheat at a discount because they know it's going to go to a community silo. It's not going to be just for resell or anything. They understand the need for it. And so yes, we should put together networks of patriot. The founders did this. They had patriot merchants and farmers and everybody else that stepped up. You bet.
Yeah, and one more point, just to reiterate the point that the Obutz Lieutenant over here probably made. Who does Joe listen to? He's not afraid of the captain because he's off, being a talk roach. Okay, he's worried about platoon daddy. Okay,
right.
Order comes down and in platoon, somebody says, hey, we need to go, sandbag the sergeant major's bunker. Platoon daddy said, listen, we're not going to do that. We're just going to say that we did it. That kind of thing happens all the time, so I could definitely see a situation where an order comes down like, listen, you guys got to go do this.
Right.
So I think that proves your point as well. It's just, kind of think like a grunt.
Oh yeah, we all know the NCOs run the Army anyway. It ain't the perfume princesses at the Pentagon. Sorry, Hugh. No, Hugh wasn't that way anyway. He's operational. But he'll tell you too. It's the NCOs that run the military. So yeah, but I wouldn't forsake the officers. We got a good one right there. We got other good ones too. But certainly, it's bottom up, and it's the sergeants, it's your gunnery sergeants, your platoon sergeants, your first sergeants. That's who will probably be the decision makers when it comes to it.
Oh yeah, I forgot. We do have a training area that if anybody wants to use, come talk to us afterwards. As long as people don't do stupid, we don't have problems with you guys shooting out there.
Good to go. All right. Jim had a point or a question he wanted to make. Why don't you give the microphone to Jim right here, right there. There you go. Real fast.
Well, actually, the good colonel kind of preempted that, but I'm always asked, well, I'm just one person. What can I do? And as the colonel pointed out, in East Germany, they only had 20% that were actually in favor of freedom and democracy. And
no, they had 20% in the military.
In the military.
Who were going to fight on the side of the people.
Okay.
They had 20% who were loyalists to the regime, but in the population, they had about 80% or 85%, you think?
Right.
Who were sick and tired of communism. Yeah.
But the point is that in the American Revolution, it was pretty much the same numbers. Only about 20% actively supported the revolution.
Right. It was kind of like the breakdown he was talking about is actually a reflection of human nature.
Yeah.
It also is reflected in the 29 Palms questionnaire that Lieutenant Commander Cunningham gave out.
3 out of 5 said no, I won't do it.
you had I think it was like 26% said hell no, I'll shoot the officer who gives me that order. Then they had about another 25% that said, oh yeah, I'll do whatever I'm told. And then they had a bunch in the middle who were like, I don't even have an opinion. It's like,
Well, the problem is, as I understand it, they're taking the ones who answered, yes, I would do that, and they're transferring them all into the same units. So that
maybe. That's my point. Any regime, whether it's the Nazis, whether it's Stalin, they can always find willing hammers to come hammer you. But if the people themselves rise up, there's never enough of them. What did Solzhenitsyn say in the Gulag Archipelago? Solzhenitsyn, the famous Russian dissident, said later, he said, how we burned in the camps, wondering what would things have been like if we'd have realized the real situation, realized we had nothing left to lose, and instead of hiding in our house, waiting for the knock at the door, hoping they would pass us over, instead we'd ambush them together, come together and ambush them, then Stalin would have run out of willing organs, would have run out of secret police. There's never enough secret police to beat the people. Just like in Michoacan, there's not enough cartel members to kill all the people either. You see what I'm saying? When the good guys sit down, the bad guys win. When the good guys stand up, the bad guys run like cockroaches. I don't care if they're secret police, if they're cartel, or whatever.
Or the TSA.
They're real tough when you're by yourself. When they're now surrounded by all your neighbors in mutual supporting fields of fire, they ain't so tough.
I thought of that at the airport one time when there were about 6 TSA guys. This was early on, and there was a crowd of about 500 because I took a head count. And everybody was shifting and scowling and grumbling and moving around. And these 6 people had everybody cowed. And I thought at the time, I said, you know, if everybody just said, hey, this is stupid, and just moved, that would have been the end of it.
Right, like you're probably going to see at the World War II Memorial this weekend.
Good.
Yes, sir.
Another quick comment here, and that's Tiananmen Square. If you don't do this outreach and you don't do it national, Tiananmen Square ended because of the force multiplier, basically the tanks and stuff brought in from Mongolia,
right,
where they already had a hatred for the people that were in the streets.
A good point. They couldn't, even in communist China, they could not count on the troops from the area around that area. They had to go and get guys from other places.
So there's a couple things that I'm going to say to qualify this, okay? Because I want to make sure that I'm understanding the context of the proposition that you made about community-based organization and everything like that, and important issues, especially when you're coming up with solution-based things like this.
Right.
I think putting under a microscope is a pretty good idea and everything like
Sure.
that. So
basic message is act like Americans, not couch potatoes.
yeah, it's good stuff like that. I'd like to see it. And basically, you talked about economic downfall. You talked about the intentional speculation of the government, and those being 2 facets of things that could cause a collapse via contingency, right? So whether you're talking about the MIAC reports and who they're targeting and everything like that,
right,
or you're also talking about the inflation of the dollar or the stopping of trading of currency. The thing is, intentionality behind that collapse is also kind of a factor that's glaring, and I think an elephant in the room when it comes to solution-based activism, as far as if you are a body that's trying to take over or invade a country for whatever reason, historically speaking, especially when you have the geographical context in our standing army, there's pretty much been said and understood that it's impossible to come in with another army and invade America. They tried it in Alaska way back in the day and everything like that. It didn't work. It was too cold for them. They got kicked out and everything like that. But when you come in and you pillage an economy, you inflate the dollar, you make everything worthless and everybody hungry, it's really easy to kind of take over something that's cracking in the seams and everything like that. So what I'm hearing from your proposition, it's a proactive solution to a reaction to those contexts. So if that makes any sense, that waiting for an event to happen so we can react and be prepared for said event, okay? So rolls out. There's the raids on the food stores. You can't spend any money or anything like that. You have a community centralized base system to deal with that, so people don't go hungry, they don't go thirsty, and they don't get raided. This is very good. The things that I'm kind of concerned about is the post situation, all of that. Where does that stop? I mean, Is it the idea of this is the first step towards a different shift in the system? Are we trying to get towards reinstilling that system through continuity of government like they have kind of planned already? You know, or is
continuity of government does not preserve the Constitution. All it does really is a shadow government that they're going to roll out, and usually it involves all the powers of executive, legislative, and judicial in one hand. That's the president. So this would be continuity of liberty, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I like that. So under the context of that, is the solution part of this system more of if we have mechanisms in place to deal with if the worst case scenario happens, then that in and of itself by its existence is preventative of that?
Yes, because if they're wargaming it, I mean, my board of directors got together and said, well, if we were the bad guys, what would we do? We'd collapse the economy intentionally, let Americans starve, you know, for a few weeks or months, fall into maximum chaos, and then they'd come in and say, oh, the free market failed, you know, the Federal Reserve wasn't big enough, so here's your pretty new shiny system, which is your EBT card. All you gotta do is turn in your gun, and now it's tied to some World Bank, your economy. So they bring in their Leviathan solution. So we think that's part of what they have planned, because they realize we're waking up, so they got to stop that. Eventually, they'll drop the economic hammer as their weapon of war. So that's what we're figuring. So yeah, we're countering that, but even if that weren't going on, we should still be doing these things because this is what we're supposed to be doing in the republic the founders gave us. We're supposed to be the militia. We're supposed to be responsible for ourselves. A full spectrum American does all of those things.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just a quick thing with that though. That being said, is there a place in the context of that plan for civil disobedience and proactive resistance?
Well, sure. Like I said, like in our overall game plan is we focus on preparedness because you got to have it. You got to have food. You can't do a sit-in or any other peaceful protest if you're dead from starvation. You can't also security. You can't fight if you're dead from starvation. So you got to have food. Food, water, shelter, medical, communications, all that stuff. Then security, then economic independence. This is like a hierarchy of needs, right?
Yes.
So, and then the last one is political independence. Constitutional sheriffs, nullification down at the town and county level, passing resolutions against the NDAA or against gun control, whatever it is. And then eventually having a state that says no. Like, wouldn't it be nice if the Republic of Texas said, we ain't doing it? That'd be nice, you know? So. Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, sure. I think Jefferson and Madison, when they wrote Kentucky and Virginia resolutions, were totally spot on. Nullification is the middle road. It's the moderate answer to abuse of your rights. The states have a duty, and not only to say it's wrong, but to interpose and defend. But here's the problem with your state. Do you have the actual capacity to interpose? Do your sheriffs have a sheriff's posse to back them up to interpose and defend your rights against federal abuse? Does your governor, presuming you have a governor who's willing to do it, does your governor have a state guard or state defense force or state militia capable of doing it? So, we got to start somewhere. I'd love to see a full restoration of the militia system under command, official militia under the command of the governor. But until you get that restored, you need stopgaps. Some guys will do a private militia, and hey, God bless them, we're not going to knock them. But my way of doing it is what I just laid out. The stopgaps are the neighborhood watches and the veterans getting up in their veterans halls and getting organized. Those are your major stopgaps.
Can we just go to the next question that's right here?
Yeah, just to bring some context to this. Now, some people here are residents of Dallas County, some are residents of Collin County, but we're all, for the most part here, residents of a county somewhere in Texas. And you were asking about, we were talking before the meeting about some things going on in Dallas County. Now, we know in some states like Connecticut where they removed the office of the sheriff in 2000, under a Republican governor, in Delaware where they're attacking the sheriffs there. We could say that could never happen here.
It can.
But the tension that we're seeing on the county level here is that our state emergency statutes are talking to county judge, and I don't know if you have county judge in Montana, but some states don't have that. They say, what is that? And people will say, well, that's like the city has the mayor and the county, it's kind of like the mayor of the county. Well, in our emergency statutes of the state of Texas, it gives that county judge two powers in the areas. One is in case of emergency, which they decide, it's the county judge deciding whether it rises to the level of emergency, can control egress and ingress to that area, and can order people out of those neighborhoods. Now, the tension there would be, of course, when we're at the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officer Association conventions, we're talking about.
So what are the two powers of the county judge? To declare it as an emergency, and what was the other one?
And to control ingress and egress to areas of the county that they deem to be needful in the best public interest. Well,
okay, so like critical areas.
Right.
Okay, gotcha.
So we know from Sheriff Mack and our discussions at CSPOA, Sheriff's is the chief law enforcement officer of the county.
Right.
Well, and the gentleman pointed out that in Texas, to be a member of a reserve battalion and police department or reserve deputy, you have to have a TCLEOS license, which is like post. Okay, so Eastfield College down the road, you can go pay and take the classes and get your peace officer license.
Right.
And I'd encourage people to do that. But short of that, the county judge isn't likely to have his or her own auxiliary.
Right.
At least they wouldn't do it so overtly. But
well, how do they do it? So the county judge decides it's an emergency, and then he says, this area over here, like say around the power plant or the waste treatment plant, this is a critical area, we can exclude folks. What happens then? The sheriff then enforces it, or what?
Well, and there's a candidate who's running against our sitting county judge who told me that in this past legislative session, there was a rider attached to a bill that apparently snuck through. My state legislator didn't notice it, but it was to increase the powers of the county judge. And he said basically, so that they would have lights and a badge and be able to take command. We had an incident last year with this West Nile virus transmitted from mosquitoes, where our county judge made it very well known that was he was all over the TV show, I'm in charge here. And in one particular incident, he even said something to the effect of, as the chief law enforcement officer of the county. So I'm asking you, that tension between a county judge and a sheriff in a situation where, and we see DHS vehicles roll around, these Tahoes that say Homeland Security, and then they'll say police. And to the average citizen, they'll see a person in a dark uniform with a badge and a gun and think police, and not distinguish if they're federal.
Right.
So I guess I'm asking, what advice do you have for us realizing those realities of the statutes?
Of course, you always want to guard against too much power in any one set of hands. So you might want to look at that. It might be that this is a good division of power. You might say, okay, the county judge has certain authorities, but the sheriff has other authorities. The county judge doesn't really have any guys, so he's more of a, his power really is only his status and persuasion.
It is still a 3-member county emergency board, which is county judge, county sheriff, and county tax assessor collector, right?
Oh, so he's on, so he's one of 3 then.
He's
okay.
one of 3.
That's not bad. I mean, I'm not going to say it's bad.
It depends on what county you're in. I'm running for
Get a microphone.
And did your county just acquire an MRAP vehicle for them to charge from Fort Hood as Dallas County? Yeah. That's got a lot of.
Well, yeah. I mean, here's the problem. Is one big problem that's always there is the militarization of our police, and why? What's the intent? And I believe you have to be crazy not to see the intent is to use your local police as a force multiplier against you. So that's just, there you are. So how do you counteract that? That's kind of the question. Well, you need a good sheriff in office if you can get one. You tried, right? You ran for sheriff against the current incumbent. What did you get, 43%? 42%? That's not bad. Try again. So here's a candidate for sheriff, or at least one possibility. If you got a sheriff you don't trust, it's not a constitutional sheriff, you need to fix that. But how's the judge? Is the judge a squared away person, or is the judge an oath breaker too?
Our judge is very liberal.
Very liberal? Well,
Stuart, we're being asked to close down fairly quickly, but let me just say that we've got about 3 more questions here. We've got one comment with regard to this particular topic right here.
Yeah, go ahead, real quick.
I'm running for Ellis County Judge, so I'm aware of how all of this goes down as far as emergency planning, things like that. With our sheriff, he is actually in charge when it comes to who goes where, what they do, so forth and so on. When it comes to the emergency planning, the judge can state who does what, where they go, because they're over the person who is actually in charge of it. But when it comes to actually enforcement, the judge cannot, at least in our county, tell the sheriff what to do. Our sheriff can straight out go, sorry, no, not going to do that. Right. So we're kind of protected in Ellis as far as who has the power and authority. We're also lucky enough to have a sheriff who will not violate the Constitution. He has told us time and time again he is an oath keeper and he will stand with us. He has informed us time and time again, if things go bad, every person in that county who's willing to stand with him is deputized at that time.
But you got to organize them now, though. Don't wait for it to go bad to organize.
We've already done that. We're doing good down there.
Good to go. All right.
One more question right here. We've got 2 more after this.
Okay, real quick. Go ahead. The restaurant wants us to close down?
Yeah, they're wanting us to get out.
Okay.
Well, we can make this real quick.
There's nobody out there now. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, there's another element of society that I think should be addressed. And you can get copies of the Moriarty presentation that Regina, she's bringing them back again this month. From John Gentry and John Seidler, they have copies of that last one, the DVDs. But they brought out something that I'd never heard the term before, although I had personally experienced in an area of my own. If you learn something they don't want you to know, or they think you might be a whistleblower, they pull the rug out from under you in every aspect of your life. And they call this soft kill. Mm-hmm. And the Moriartys had this done. They lost a $700 million business, couldn't get jobs. Even the King of Dubai would not help them, who was a personal friend after that.
Okay.
These people will need help, and there are probably a lot more of them in our society than we're aware of. And a lot of them may not even be aware of just what's happened to them.
Right. Well, that kind of goes back to a program we had, which I want to revitalize as part of this, called Family Safe. And the idea there is that you have a duty, responsibility to make sure your good police officers and National Guardsmen and current service military, for example, know that they can rely on you to take care of their families while they're deployed or while they're out there doing whatever they have to do. So, and I think it's critical for you to see that also as an important element, even within your Veterans Hall. If your Veterans Hall is going to see itself as an operational unit, the guys are not going to go out in the field and do stuff if they're worried about mom and the kids. So you got to make sure you provide for that, a safe place for them. And so you could say the same thing about people like you're talking about, if they've been targeted, taken down, like all these whistleblowers. If a guy's willing to come forward as a whistleblower and he winds up, whether it's a police department or someone in the federal government, we should be willing, ready, and able to assist them when the hammer's dropped on them, like you said. You know, they've been fired, they've had their, you know, they go see their bank accounts, whatever. You should help them. You're right. So if you can get that as part of your local mutual aid society, absolutely. Okay, one other question?
Yeah, one here. Comment.
Yeah.
Last week, Nancy Pelosi was describing the conflict between Obamacare and government shutdown. She said that's just a pretext. She said what's really going on right now is a debate about the extent of government. And I realized as soon as she said that, she was exactly right. This explains the Occupy Wall Street movement and the Anonymous movement and the Tea Party movement. It explains the problem we see in government right now. We see states like Colorado and Washington that have legalized marijuana, and the government has refused. Feds have said, we're not going to do anything about it. We're going to let them go. We're seeing states that are passing laws right now that are resisting the federal government, saying, we're not going to obey your damn laws.
Right.
It's evidence that the whole country is right now aware of this movement between limited and unlimited government. And that's what we're seeing right now tonight. This is an expression. We are not an aberration. We are not alone. Right. You know, this meeting is remarkable because you've got 70, 80 people showed up here tonight on 6 days. 6 days. That's a tribute to the speaker. It's a tribute to the organizer who put this together. But it's evidence that the body politic is in agreement with what we're talking about. You couldn't get 70 people to show up for this meeting unless a whole bunch of Americans already agreed with what we're doing. We are in a war right now. It's taken place, and we are returning. We're grabbing limited government. We're coming back for that. Some of you may consider running for public office in this next election. And you need to think right now about establishing your policy, your idea, the basis of your candidacy, or saying I am for limited government. The public is waiting on you to do that. And one other thing. What we're looking at right now is the beginning of something like the Minutemen back in the, if we can show up in 6 days, we can show up in 6 hours, maybe even 6 minutes. You're looking at Minutemen right now. You all deserve a round of applause. Thank you.
Cool. Good point. Yeah, well said. Yeah. Oh, good. Good. Well said. And, you know, guys, next weekend at Saturday the 19th, I think that's going to be an important watershed for you Texans. It's probably wasn't intended to be, but it might be a gut check too. So you've got a police chief there who's hostile to your right to bear arms, and you've got Texans who are intent on correcting him in the error of his ways. Hopefully, by doing it like they've done in the past, being able to show the police that, look, this is lawful in Texas. You have a right, you have an obligation and duty to respect our rights. But regardless, I think you all should be there. You need to step up in physical space and exercise your rights. As the man said over here, if you don't exercise them, they atrophy. So I'll be there. I'm coming back. I'll be there at that march right alongside my state chapter president on Saturday the 19th outside the Alamo. So if some guy from Montana will do it, then every one of you Texans better be there too. All right? All right, guys. Thanks for coming out.